Let's go ahead and get started with our webinar. This is part of our fall series webinars, and today we're going to be taking a look at some new features in HubSpot related to AI functionality. Now, my name is Grayson. I am the technical sales engineer here at Topline, so I work a lot with our technical and sales teams on things like demonstrations, trainings, and customer project work across all the platforms we support, like Dynamics, Zoho, and HubSpot. I'm also involved in Symphony Sync, which is an internal tool that we've created that helps sync data between HubSpot and Dynamics in the development, customer support, and content creation. Now, for today's webinar, we're going to be taking a look at the Breeze Marketplace, which is one central location in which you can see all the different AI agents that HubSpot has to offer, and we'll go through what that looks like. And specifically with our AI agents, today we'll be taking a look at the prospecting and customer agents, and we'll be taking a look at more of the back-end side of things so you can get familiar with what setup looks like and the kind of information you might need if you'd like to look to implement one of these agents for yourself. We'll also take a look at two new cards that are available on a record, and those are going to be specifically the customer lifetime value card, as well as the revenue attribution card. And then finally, we'll also take a look at the Breeze Copilot data model configuration, which is a way in which we can basically use Breeze Copilot to make system level changes and modifications using natural language. Now, we do have a lot of content to cover today, and we might not be able to get to any questions you have live during the demonstration. However, if you do have any questions while we're going through, feel free to type those in the chat box. Of course, if we don't have the time to answer them during the webinar, we'll be reaching out to you afterwards to answer any remaining questions that have still yet been unanswered. Now, with that said, let's jump into today's demo. The first thing I'd like to take a little bit of a look at is going to be our Breeze agents. Now, these Breeze agents can be found in your marketplace. So this is available up here in the top right-hand corner of your navigation, and we're going to look at the HubSpot marketplace. Now, if you haven't been in the HubSpot marketplace before, this is a central location that allows you to look for a lot of different products that HubSpot has available, including your ability to connect with outside platforms. So whether that be an ERP or a service provider for something like your PBX or telephony, as well as it'll also house the location in which we can look at all the different AI agents that HubSpot has available. So when we click into Marketplace, if we'd like to view our AI agents, we're going to be clicking on this Breeze Agents button here at the top. This is going to take us over to a marketplace that is specific for all the different AI agents that HubSpot has to offer. If we scroll down slightly, we can see some of our most trending agents, such as the prospecting agent, data agent, call recap agent, and deal loss agent, as well as some others over here, the social post agent, the customer agent, and the customer handoff agent. Now, if you'd like to look at the exact specifics of what any of these agents have to offer, you can of course just click into one and you'll get a brief overview of what this agent can do for you. Now, if we jump back over to our agents, if we scroll down slightly further, we can also look at some suggestions of agents we might want to use based on how we're using HubSpot. And then also down at the bottom, we can explore all the agents that HubSpot has to offer. And here we can specifically select if any of these agents are compatible with the plans we have, or if they work with Breeze. And we can sort by relevance, the most installed, the newest, or simply by name, as well as having the ability to filter by product type, whether or not we have it installed already, what type of agent it is. So is it an agent? Is it more of an assistant? And then what kind of team would this agent work on? So things like marketing agents, sales agents versus service agents. Now for today, we're specifically going to be taking a look at the prospecting and customer agents. Now, once you have any of these agents installed, they will be navigable from their relative entity. So because the prospecting agent is an agent that can assist with sales, we can find our prospecting agent, again, once it's installed, under our sales area over here, and then we'll find our prospecting agent. Now again, for today's webinar, we're specifically going to be looking at sort of what the back end of these agents looks like. So once we're in our prospecting agent, we'll head over to the agent setup in the top right-hand corner. Now with this prospecting agent, what we can do is we can set up different selling profiles. So this is specifically going to be the type of approach that our agents use for either different audiences, different products, or maybe even the different types of sales motions we have. And we'll jump into what one of those profiles looks like in just a moment here. We can also add exclusion lists to our agent, which is basically saying what segmented list of contacts in the system do we not want to have our agents reach out to. So specifically for something like our prospecting agent, maybe we don't want our agent to reach out any new contact that we've had come from a referral because we already have some sort of relation built that we can work on top of. Or if it's something like a employee personally knows this contact from some other form of business, that's also a situation in which we don't want our agent to reach out to because we have some form of contact already. So one of the scenarios in which these prospecting agents can really help is if you're trying to fill in the gaps of your current sales process. Maybe you don't have enough people and you would like more assistance in the initial steps of communication, or maybe you're targeting a new market that you historically have not had any contact with, or maybe you're targeting a different segment of business that you have not originally had contact with or were not familiar with doing business with. So a lot of different ways you can set up the agent, and for each one of those agents, you can set up an exclusion list of exactly who you don't want to target these agents to. And finally, with this agent, we can also set up automated enrollment. So how would we like one of these agents to be utilized when a new record comes into the system? Now, when it comes to automated enrollments, we can have a new contact go into this agent either on a trigger, which is going to be when that contact takes some specific action. So that's things like when they viewed a page, or if they've submitted a form, or if they've clicked on an email. Those are all examples of triggers in which we could send this automated agent to help prospect that particular contact. You can also have these agents work on specific criteria. So for instance, maybe if we had no communication in the last 365 days, that might be a time in which we want to have this prospecting agent reach out to that contact in hopes of pulling them back into our sales process. And we can also have our agents work on our existing marketing lists. So when a contact perhaps enrolls in a marketing list, that's when we'd like our agent to reach out and start working on that particular contact. So those are the basic sorts of setup you can have for these agents. Now we'll head back over to profiles and we'll check into what it looks like to set up one of these agent profiles. Now with our agent profile, the first thing is we're going to give this agent a name and a description of how we want this agent to perform and what we want this agent to do. Now this is an internal name, your customers don't see this information, so this is more for internal recognition on what this AI agent is supposed to do. So for my instance, I'd like to set up a new prospecting agent, and this agent is just used for prospecting any new potential business. Once you've set up a description, you can also set up an identity for this agent. And what the identity is basically figuring out how we want this agent to appear when we're sending out emails. So do we want to either have these communications look like they're coming from the already existing owner of that specific contact? So if I already own a contact in the system, when the AI agent starts to work and prospect that contact, I want all the communications to look like they're coming from me specifically. On the alternative, We can also have the agent always send from a specific single user. So we might want to set up something like an AI prospecting agent and have our AI agent use that record or user record in the system as the sort of dignifier that all of these communications and all of these records and all these emails are coming from this prospecting agent, and they're not sort of acting on behalf of someone in the system. So that's sort of the identity you can set up with this prospecting agent. You can also set up a tone for this prospecting agent's communication. So the tone is just, the general type of tone that your agent is going to be using when it is having these communications with your new prospects. So you can use a preset tone, and those are going to be things like professional, helpful, witty, formal, or optimistic. But if you do have a brand voice already set up in HubSpot, you can also have your AI agent use your pre-existing brand voice when it has all of its communications. Along with our tone, we can also set up different languages that our agent is able to communicate in. So if your contact does have specifically a preferred language set up that maybe is not English, your AI agent can actually even prospect in that contact's preferred language as long as that's defined somewhere on their record. So those are sort of the basic wide-ranging profiles that we can set up for one of our prospecting agents. Now we can also set up the sources and information our agent would be training from. So we'll go down here to our selling information, and what our agent will do is it'll actually pull information directly from our pre-existing website as a source for the information it's going to be using when it's prospecting these contacts. So what you can do is you can type in your website here and you can analyze your website. Now what this means is that your agent is actually targeting a lot of different categories, such as knowing what your company's selling, knowing what your specific value proposition is, knowing what pain points your company might solve for a particular customer, what products and services your agent should be selling, what industries you target, and what personas or job titles are you targeting with this agent. Now, if you do use this analyze from website, HubSpot will actually pre-fill all of this information for you automatically, or you can either manually type this information in or even have your agent generate some information automatically, such as what your company sells or your value proposition, and then tweak it a little bit afterwards to fit your specific vision of what this agent should be doing. You can also set up a call to action, and this is going to be what forms of communication the agent can include in its outreach. So this is going to be things like requesting that the contact it's working on books a meeting. And that can either be the default meeting link for the particular sender it's sending these emails on behalf of. So if the agent is working on one of my contacts, it'll actually try to include my own meeting link with communications with this potential new client. We can also have it attach different HubSpot documentation. So if you have documents you want your agent to be utilizing and including in your outreach, you can set that up. And you can also include specific URLs if you want your agent to send links that your customer can click on. So all pretty cool things you can do with your call to action. We'll also have specific guide rails or guardrails we'd like to set up for our agent. And this is going to be things like the autonomy of our AI agent. So when it comes to autonomy, there are two different modes we can set our agent in, which is either going to be when our agent generates new sales emails, would we like our agent to send those emails automatically with no human manual review? Or do we want our agent to craft these emails, but then we need to make sure and confirm the validity or the content of these emails before this message is actually sent out to the customer it's prospecting? Now, this might be a big contention in your organization, whether or not you want to have these AI agents actually perform autonomously. So you do have the ability for these agents to toggle whether you'd like to review those communications before they're actually sent out to those new prospects. We can also set up some outreach guidance. So this is things like would we like our agent to be prospecting 24/7, or do we only want our agent to be prospecting on real business days so it looks like it's a legitimate person working normal hours sending these emails? So you can have your agent only set to execute on business days. Along with that, you can also set exactly when during the day you'd like this email to be sent. So right now our sending window is sort of at the default here, but we could do something like set our sending window to our normal work hours of 8 in the morning to 5 p.m. So I'd like my agent to send these emails during a typical business time of day. And you can also set your time zone as well for what time it should be referencing for that time period you've set up of your working hours. As well, you can also set up the outreach frequency of your agent. So that's going to be the minimum amount of days in which it waits to send emails. So by default, that's going to be 3 days. And then you can also set the max amount of emails your agent will be sending to one particular contact per enrollment. So in my case, I'm going with the default of I only want my agent to send out 5 emails in total, and I really don't want it to communicate more than that. So that's going to be sort of our basic outreach guidance for this agent. And then finally, we have the ability to allow advanced settings. Now, what this is going to be is this is going to allow us to give specific and custom instructions in which we'd like our AI agent to follow when it's either communicating or sort of a target on how it should communicate. So for instance here, we might want to sort of explicitly specify that we want our agent to be helpful and professional in all communications and have its focus on building relationships and more providing value to prospects. Now, some examples you might want to also take a look at, which HubSpot offers you, is things like seniority-based messaging. So for instance, for specific job titles like C-suite or VPs, keep your emails short and direct with their subject lines. For things like frequency, maybe never send more than 1 a week to the same contact. And if they open but don't respond, wait at least a couple days before you try again. Or even industry-specific approaches. So for something like if you're working with healthcare, emphasize your compliance and patient outcomes in your subject lines. Now, if you're working for tech, maybe you want to focus your content towards your efficiency and your scalability. And you can even have it try to reference recent industry news or challenges when it's available for that contact's company's data. So a lot of very powerful things you can do with this prospecting agent. And like mentioned before, you can have multiple different profiles set up. So you can even have these AI profiles targeted towards specific sort of either industries, categories, focus on specific products, and you can all have these running simultaneously with your different profiles as you've set them up simultaneously. So again, a lot of powerful things you can do with it. It's sort of up to your imagination on the best way or the gaps that you might want to fill in your own business process that this AI agent can help with. Now, our next AI agent is going to be the customer agent. Now, this is a sales or a service-focused agent, so it's actually going to be found under our service section here, and we'll be able to find our customer agent. Now, as opposed to our sales agent, this is specifically going to be focusing on our existing customers and how we're communicating or helping with those customers. And once we're here, we'll take a look at our management of this AI agent so we can see the type of information we can give it and the sort of types of actions this agent can perform. Now, we can give our agent an identity. So that's going to be things like the icon and name it's using when it's trying to communicate with your customers, and also the personality in which you'd like to give this agent when it's communicating. So that could be things like friendly, professional, casual, empathetic, and witty. But again, just like our prospecting agent, if you do have a brand voice already set up in HubSpot, you can have your customer agent use that pre-existing brand voice. And just like our prospecting agent as well, If you do have a customer base that is in multiple languages, you can have your agent auto-detect the language your customer is using in their first message to help tailor your customer agent to communicate in their preferred language. Now, once you have your basic agent identity set up, you can select your knowledge sources. So this is going to be specifically where your AI customer agent is getting its information when it is trying to help a customer with a problem. So this could be things like a website, it could be things like your landing page, it could be any blogs you've set up and published, or it could be any files you're housing in HubSpot that you want your AI agent to use. So there's a lot of different options that you can have. So you can either import content from HubSpot, a file or a public URL, or you can also create short answers, which is a specific Q&A that you might get frequently that you want your AI agent to be able to handle. So a lot of different options for data for your customer agent to harness when it's trying to solve issues for your customers. Now that we've set up our agent identity and its knowledge sources, we can also set up its actions. So these are going to be specific tasks that your agent can perform, which is things like sending invoices or order updates without having a representative needing to step in. So I have one sort of pre-existing option and action we'll go through here, which is something like helping the customer with a password reset. So once we click into one of those actions there or create a new action, we'll get set up with this setup menu here. This is where we can describe what we want with a name of this action. So I'd like to help my customer with their password reset. So I can describe my action and then give it a description, as well as trigger phrases that the AI agent is searching for when it's trying to figure out what your customer wants to happen. So if I want to help a customer with the password reset, my customer is probably asking things like, I need to reset my password. How do I change my password? I'm locked out of my account. Can you help me recover my password? Or my password isn't working. And what's really nice about this customer agent is you can see here, when I hover over some of these different items, I have this generate button. So what HubSpot does is actually just based on the name of the action you've input up top here, you can actually have HubSpot generate content such as the description or trigger phases and have that automatically filled out and not need to be manually typed. You can also define required inputs. So once your customer agent defines what action your customer is going to be performing, again, things like this password update, it'll also ask the customer for specific information that it needs before it can help solve the problem. So for instance, I might need to ask the customer for their username before I'm able to reset the password. So by setting up this required input, my customer agent will actually ask that question for me and gather that information for me, so I don't need a real person to step in to gather that information. Now I'll skip over this configurement of API as this gets a little more technical and we don't necessarily have the time during today's webinar to cover it in fully. But we can also give our AI agent response instructions for the particular action that we've set up. So this is basically going to be what the customer agent says to the customer after completing this action. And you can give it response instructions, such as guiding the customer through the password reset, providing step-by-step instructions, and ensure that they follow security protocols and that they're confirming a successful completion. So pretty cool actions you can set up. And again, with this customer agent, you can set up multiple different and maybe even unrelated actions that you'd like your agent to perform. You'll also be able to choose a human handoff. So when your agent is going to actually hand off these customer requests to a real person. So this will be things like if the customer agent can't answer the question that your customer is asking, it'll get moved over to a human, or even if they're asking to speak to a human directly, or the agent is paused for some reason, like you're running out of HubSpot credits, it'll move it over to a real person in order to take that over. And as well, you can also set up custom triggers if you'd like specific phrases or words to trigger the customer agent to know that it actually at this point should be handing over this query to a real person to take charge of. You can also set up a handoff process. So for things like messaging channels, You can have the customer agent stay assigned to the conversation and continue responding. And if there's a reply sent, we can say things like, sorry, I can't assist with that myself. We don't have any agents available right now, and please respond with your email and we'll be in touch. Or in something like an email channel, the AI agent will be unassigned once that handoff has been set. We're also able to select specific deployment channels. So if you're using multiple channels of communication for your business, so for instance, if you have a website or mobile app and you have a customer support widget set up, or if your agent is working on email questions that come to a tip line, or maybe you have something like WhatsApp set up to answer questions, or if you're using social media like Facebook, you can have your customer agent use all of those different platforms' own communication methods in order to respond to any customer queries. So a lot of very cool functionality that you can use with these agents. The next thing we're going to take a look at is going to be our new cards that are available on our records. And the two we're going to take a look at are going to be our customer lifetime value and our revenue attribution cards. Now these cards are going to be available in the middle section of our records here, and I've added them to the bottom so we can take a look at what those look like. So our revenue attribution card is going to give us this little graph here that is going to be specific to the current company we're taking a look at, or relative to the current record we're taking a look at. And what we can do with this is we can see the attribution of revenue coming from our different sources. So things like if it came from a HubSpot page, an integration, a marketing email, or a landing page. We can also select our specific time frame we'd like to look for. So right now we're looking at all time, but we could also look at something like last year or this year so far. We can also have or change the attribution model we're using when we're looking at this information. So if you're not familiar with attribution models, they're just a way in which we can attribute specific touch points into how they contributed to the overall value of a deal. So something like first interaction is going to be all the credit is given to that first point of contact, or last interaction will give all the credit to the most recent point of contact that led to that closed deal. And you can also specify and take a look at just the dimensions that matter instead of looking at all dimensions. So you could look at just integrations and marketing emails and don't need to see all the other dimensions that contribute towards this graph here. And you can also have Copilot Breeze show you a little summary, and this will tell you, give you a little bit of a report with more text-based information on what's going on with your revenue attribution graph. Just below that, we'll have the customer lifetime value card. And what this is going to do is this is going to give your customer a lifetime value to help make sure that your highest value customers feel understood and appreciated. Now with this customer lifetime value, we can see the deals as they close per month in this instance, so we can keep track of the trends in our closed deals. We can use any record or field on our record for the x-axis as well as the y-axis, but for the most part, you're going to be tracking something like the close date of deals versus the amount of in currency that these deals are contributing. And with this, we can see that historic lifetime value of how much this particular customer is brought in and the overall lifespan of this particular customer. And again, just like before, we can generate a report with the above information taken into consideration. Now, the final thing we're going to touch on today is going to be our Breeze Copilot data model configuration. So this is some functionality that's available in your Breeze AI Assistant menu, in which you can pop open here. And what this means is you can ask Breeze to help make changes in the system configuration for you. So for instance, if you'd like to add a new field to the company, maybe to record some specific information, you can do something like, I'd like to add a property to my company record. And what it's going to do is it's going to take your query and try to guide you on the best process in order to create a new property for that record. So it's going to ask you for what we're looking for. So are we looking simply to add or update a value, or are you looking to create some new information? So I'd like to create a new property that helps me record a URL for documentation related to the account. Now, HubSpot is going to sort of parse that query, help generate content for you, and that's going to be a name and a description of the field, as well as the field type in order to store the information you're looking for. So it's going to propose you this new property. It'll tell you what the name of it, what the text is, and what it should be doing. Now, at this point, you can make any changes based on what it's providing for you. But if you'd like, and you're satisfied with what HubSpot is recommending, you can just say something like, I'd like to create this property. And what that's going to do after it runs, of course, is it's going to create that custom property, tell you what it's called, where it's storing information, and even give you a link to the backend where we can see that new property we've created. So this is some pretty powerful functionality, but of course you will need the requisite permissions to modify the system if you would like to use this. So you don't need to worry about your users modifying things through Breeze Copilot if they wouldn't have been able to do it beforehand on their own. So some pretty cool functionality here. And again, this is very open with all the different actions you can perform with this data model configuration. And I just want to thank you all for coming to today's webinar. And I hope you learned something useful that HubSpot can offer you and that you might want to look to implement in your own HubSpot system.